Some things you only believe because you see them with your own eyes. Like a woman being turned away at a wedding just because her clothes didn't shine enough. It was a sunny Saturday, but the air felt heavy. The hall, decorated to the ceiling, with white flowers and crystal chandeliers, looked like a wedding from a magazine. Beautiful people, rich people, and noses held very high dot at the entrance. A guard in a black suit and a stern face extended his arm right in front of her. Invitation, he asked, with a voice colder than the air conditioner. She swallowed hard, pulled a wrinkled envelope from her cloth purse. Here it is, sir. I was invited by Mrs. Mariana. Who? The groom's grandmother, she replied, with a timid smile and a blouse worn out by time. He looked her up and down, took his time. Your clothes aren't appropriate for this event. I'm sorry, I can't let you in. She widened her eyes. But I've been the groom's nanny since he was a baby. I changed his diapers. But the guard was already turning away, speaking into his earpiece. Problem solved. Just an intruder. She stood there, still. Her hands trembled. Her face flushed not with shame, but with indignation, and at that moment, the words left her mouth. That's why you have everything, except a soul. The phrase shot through the air like lightning. Across the hall, a man in a dark gray suit, drink in hand, slowly turned. He had heard, and what he saw was his entire past wrapped in the gaze of that woman in a simple dress. The world stopped for a second, and that's when everything began to change. The man put down his glass. Didn't even finish the sip. Between the $1 million arrangements and the smiling guests, he crossed the hall like someone chasing a ghost from the past. People turned to greet him, but he didn't see them. He only saw her, standing outside, dignity bruised, with the look of someone carrying more history than any book. Wait, he said, already near the guard. Why is she outside? The guard, surprised, straightened up. Mr. Enrique, she claimed to have been your nanny, but she doesn't seem appropriate for. Enrique raised his hand. Appropriate, he repeated, slowly. Do you know who cleaned up my vomit when I came home crying from school? Who gave me warm milk when my mother forgot me in my room? That woman took care of me like a mother. Silence, a silence that hurt. The woman, who until then hadn't believed what she was hearing, covered her mouth with her hand. Enrique, my God, Enrique, and Zuleide, he said, voice cracking. It's me. Time seemed to rewind 20 years in that moment, but before they could embrace, an elegant lady appeared like a dart. What is going on here? It was Mariana, the matriarch, the groom's grandmother, and a woman who always hid more than she revealed. Her makeup-covered face trembled with indignation. This woman cannot be here, she said. And Zuleide, eyes filled with tears, replied, because you're afraid the truth will come out. Enrique stood still, and right there, in that instant, the champagne lost its taste, because the past had returned. The party went on, but Enrique's heart trembled. He took Zuleide by the hand and led her to the back garden. There, away from the elite's eyes, she took a deep breath. I thought you'd forgotten me, she said, looking at the ground. Enrique held her aged hands, marked by years of labor. How could I forget who taught me how to tie my shoes? Who told me stories when no one cared if I was even alive? Zuleide looked down. I got the invitation from your grandmother. It felt strange, but deep down, I just wanted to see you happy. Enrique frowned. My grandmother never mentioned you, not once. Zuleide gave a shy smile. That's because she sent me away, overnight. Said my simple ways didn't match the heir's upbringing. Enrique turned pale. I didn't know. Zuleide then pulled out an old, folded sheet from her bag. This is a letter. Your mother wrote it to me before she died. Enrique opened it. Read it. And the words told another story. They said Zuleide was more than a maid. She was a confidant, a right hand, someone who knew too many secrets. My mother saw you as family. Yes, Enrique, but family scares those with too many secrets. His eyes trembled, and amid the music echoing from the party, he said, I'm going to find out everything. That very night, the millionaire didn't return to the dance floor. He vanished from the hall, locked himself in the mansion study where the party was being held. He turned on the computer, opened old folders, scanned letters, contracts, and one folder named Z. There, he found photos. Zuleide holding him as a baby. Zuleide at Christmas, holding a present too cheap for such a big smile, and a video. Enrique hit play. It was his mother, young, tired, sitting in a white armchair, speaking to the camera. If Enrique ever grows up and no one tells him, he needs to know he only had a childhood because a woman named Zuleide carried the world on her back. She gave the hugs I never could. Enrique paused. Tears streamed down. But there was more. A scanned document, an old will, and a handwritten note. I wish for Zuleide to remain in the house as guardian and caretaker of Enrique. Date: 1 week before his mother's death. The problem? The official will read at the funeral. Didn't mention Zuleide, which could only mean one thing. They hid this, whispered Enrique, eyes burning with anger. They erased the woman who raised me, out of fear, out of greed. Outside, fireworks lit up the sky. But there, in the darkness of the office, truth was beginning to ignite. Enrique left the office with red eyes. Zuleide sat on a bench near the glowing fountain. But he didn't go to her. He headed for the main stage. Stop the music, he shouted. The DJ stopped. Startled, guests turned. Confused. His grandmother, Mariana, hurried over. Enrique, what are you doing? The only right thing anyone's ever done in this house. He grabbed the microphone. The hall fell silent. There's someone here who taught me what true love is. Who raised me when no one cared. Who was erased from our story, but not by me. All eyes turned. I'm talking about Zuleide, the woman you turned away at the door like she was a mistake. But if anyone deserves this cake, this party, and this love, it's her. Mariana tried to intervene. Enrique, this is not the time to silence. Grandma, you lied to me. You hid the will. You kicked out the person who was truly my family. Everyone held their breath. Enrique turned to the crowd. If you want to live for appearances, go ahead. I'll live for truth, and the truth is with Zuleide. Zuleide cried, motionless, as if time had finally delivered justice. And at that moment, no one knew what hurt more, the fall of the elite's mask, or the heart of a man finally waking up to life. Asterisk after the unexpected toast. The hall was split like a battlefield. On one side, those applauding Zuleide with tears in their eyes. On the other, those whispering, rolling their eyes, already planning what to say in the elite WhatsApp groups. But Enrique didn't care anymore. He only saw one thing. The woman who had been erased from her own story now shined there, even dressed in simplicity. But like everything in life, true joy doesn't last long when someone is determined to crush what is genuine. That same night, Mariana summoned Enrique for a private talk. In the office, again, she was already there, sitting in a leather armchair, wine glass in hand, legs crossed like someone preparing for a verbal duel. You made a spectacle, a disgrace. You exposed our family. Enrique leaned against the bookshelf. He wasn't there to pretend. I revealed the truth, something you haven't done since my mother died. Mariana gave a crooked smile. Your mother was weak, too emotional. Always tried to turn that woman, she pointed with contempt, into some kind of martyr. But Zuleide is just that, a former maid. And a former maid's place is not at a family celebration. Enrique stayed silent, but it was the silence before the storm. Did you forge a will? Mariana swallowed hard. The wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. What did you say? I saw the date. I saw the signature, the notarized stamp. I saw everything, and I remember, Grandma, I remember that after Mom died, you insisted on settling everything quickly with a lawyer. She stood. I did what was best for you, so you wouldn't grow up spoiled by simple folk, so you wouldn't be confused with the maid's children. Enrique froze. That sentence said more than 1,000 documents. So that's it, he asked, voice trembling. You erased the only woman who ever gave me love. Out of pure prejudice, I protected your legacy. She shouted, you should thank me. Enrique stepped closer, looked her in the eyes, and calmly said, I don't want that legacy. Grandma, if it costs the silence of good people, I'd rather start from scratch. He walked out, leaving Marianne alone with her own shadow, and with a detail she didn't notice, on the shelf, above the books, a small hidden camera was recording. The clock struck almost midnight when Enrique returned to the garden. Guests were already leaving, some pretending they hadn't seen anything, others passing by with timid smiles, avoiding eye contact with the man who had just flipped his entire story upside down. Zuleide sat on a bench near the little artificial pond, alone. Her simple dress now looked like gold dot because that night She was the one who sparkled. Enrique walked up to her slowly, and before saying anything, he heard a sound, a cry soft, hidden, coming from behind a bush. "Did you hear that?" he asked, and both stood up. They went over, and what they found was a boy about 7 years old in a tight suit. Terry Zuleide knelt down first. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" The boy sniffled. I'm the groom's nephew, but my mom left me alone out here. Said kids can't be in the fancy part of the party. I just wanted to see the cake." Enrique felt a tightness in his chest, because he knew that feeling, the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling invisible. Zuleide took a tissue from her purse and wiped the boy's face. "What's your name, honey?" "Leo," he replied, calmer now. "Well, Leo, you know what? Forgotten kids always grow up with superpowers." "Really?" "Oh yes," she said, with a smile full of invisible scars, "because when the world turns its back, God pulls you by the hand." Enrique knelt beside them. "Come here, champ. I also grew up hearing I didn't belong in the fancy places. But today, I know the real fancy place is where there's hugs, where people look you in the eye, where there's love." The boy looked at them, surprised, and threw himself into Zuleide's arms. She hugged him like she was stitching together, in that instant, the wound she still carried from the past. And Enrique cried like he hadn't in years. Not for the boy, not for Zuleide, but for himself, for that little boy inside who was also forgotten in the cold corridors of the mansion, and who now was finally receiving a healing hug. At that moment, the party truly ended, because all that mattered was right there, a child, a man, and a woman, quietly rebuilding what life had broken with shouting. The next morning, Enrique didn't wake up on a feather pillow. He woke up on the floor of truth. He'd spent the night reviewing documents, remembering faded smiles, trying to understand how many years of his life he'd lived believing a lie. The will, the addendum, the images. The tape from his mother. But something still didn't make sense. Why wasn't Zuleide's name in any official company records? He murmured, opening folders, contracts, board files. Then he saw it, a signature, covered with whiteout. He asked the legal department for a full report, and there it was. In 2003, the company had registered a new statute, a new corporate agreement, but in the previous version, from 2000, there was the name of an honorary collaborator, with lifelong symbolic salary and lifelong health care, Zuleide Nascimento. Enrique brought both documents to a handwriting expert. The result came within hours. The alteration was manual, done with whiteout and reprinted. The fraud is evident. Enrique closed his eyes. The company he had inherited was stained, not by dirty business, but by a personal cowardice. And in that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. "I'm going public with this, asterisk." Enrique turned on his phone camera. No makeup, no filter, no rehearsed lines, puffy eyes, plain t-shirt, steady voice. "I'm Enrique Montero, heir to one of the country's most traditional families, but today, I'm not speaking as a businessman. I'm speaking as a man who discovered that part of his story was stolen by people within his own family." He paused. "For years, a woman named Zuleide Nascimento took care of me as if I were her own child. My mother loved her. She even left that in writing, but everything was erased, hidden, tampered with, out of shame, out of status. Zuleide was silenced." Enrique held the paper up to the camera. "This is the proof, and I'm here to say, the farce is over. Zuleide is part of my life, and from today on, she'll get what's hers, not just a name on paper, but a place in the heart of someone who truly matters." He posted the video. No hesitation. In minutes, it exploded. Millions of views, thousands of comments. People sharing similar stories, others confessing tears they didn't know they had. And in the middle of it all, Zuleide watched with her hands over her mouth. "I only wanted a hug. Dear Lord," she whispered, "and you gave me the world." Truth, when spoken out loud, does to things. It frightens cowards and frees those who were already prisoners inside. The day after the video was posted, headlines read, "Heir exposes family facade and moves the nation." Forgotten nanny becomes symbol of social justice. Millionaire reveals forged documents. In national shock, but Enrique didn't care about headlines. He wanted real change, concrete, something that would leave a mark in stone, not just in headlines. That's why, 3 days later, he called a press conference. No red carpet, no glamorous set. The venue was the yard of the new institute, still under construction. Bricks stacked, rebar sticking out, the air full of fresh cement. There, in front of cameras, reporters, social workers, teachers, and curious onlookers. Enrique stood on a small wooden platform, shirt sleeves rolled up, no tie. Next to him, Zuleide. She wore a navy blue dress, hair tied back with a flowered scarf, eyes nervous from the attention, but a heart solid as the rock that never wanted to shine, just support. Enrique held the microphone with both hands, took a deep breath, and spoke. The truth came out, and now comes what really matters. Repair. The camera zoomed in. Reporters adjusted their mix, but he didn't read anything. He spoke from the heart. This woman beside me is Zuleide Nascimento. And that last name isn't a coincidence, because she was the one who gave me a second birth. When my childhood was just luxury-painted abandonment, Zuleide lowered her head. Her eyes shimmered. My mother wrote that Zuleide was part of our family, but that wish was erased, stolen, and today, we restore it. Enrique turned to her, pulled out an envelope. Aunt Zuleide, this is your new contract with the Montero Foundation. But more than that, it's the official acknowledgement of a story that was already yours from the beginning. From today on, you are our Director of Human Relations, with a dignified salary, lifelong health care, psychological support, and full autonomy. Zuleide tried to refuse. You don't need to, my boy. Enrique cut her off. Yes, I do. Because everything you gave me, no one could ever repay. But this is the least I can do. Applause. But it didn't stop there. Enrique raised another paper. And more. Today, we are officially founding the Zuleide Nascimento Institute, headquartered here on this very land, a free school for orphaned, abandoned, or neglected children. Here, every student will have a name, affection, and a voice. No one will be called servant, forgotten, or nobody. Here, everyone matters. More applause. Reporters crying, educators filming with trembling hands. Even the most skeptical journalists stood up and clapped. Enrique continued, and I want to say something to those watching at home. With ties and fake smiles, anyone who builds an empire on injustice inherits loneliness, but those who repair inherit peace. Zuleide, eyes filled, took the microphone. She took a deep breath and said, with her raspy voice, I never dreamed of this. I only wanted the right to love and peace. But today, I feel like the world heard me. Enrique held her hand, and it will never forget you again. The crowd erupted in applause, and there, among bricks, dust, and truth, something was born that not even time will be able to erase. Justice with a name, a tax ID, and a heart. Some tributes are made with plaques. Others with speeches, but true gratitude lives in gestures. Enrique knew that. That's why he didn't just want to sign a contract. He wanted to give her a home. He spent weeks planning, without letting Zuleide know. He visited architects, asked decorators for help, chose every detail himself, but made one request. I want a house with grandma's soul, with the smell of fresh bread, a hammock on the porch, and a tree in the yard. When it was ready, he went to get her personally. Zuleide was living in a modest little room behind a church, few pieces of furniture, an old radio, and a jar of cornstarch cookies always full, even without visitors. Where are you taking me, Enrique? She asked, with the wary tone of someone who has been forgotten too many times in life. You'll see, during the ride. Zuleide kept looking out the window like a child who had never left the neighborhood, curious eyes, clutching her purse tightly, as if carrying memories along with documents. They arrived in front of a white gate. Behind it, a little red-roofed house, flower boxes on the windows, and a young jaboticaba tree in the yard. Enrique got out first, opened the car door. Held out his hand. Welcome home, Aunt. Zuleide didn't move. Her eyes shimmered, her mouth open, but no sound came, only tears. Enrique, I can't accept this. My son, this is too much. What was too much was everything you did for me. This house isn't a payment. It's a return. She walked in slowly. Light wooden floors, a living room with floral armchairs, a kitchen with lace curtains. On the stove, a brand new enamel teapot, blue. Enrique, this looks like a house from a TV show. No, it looks like the house I always dreamed of, when the only place I was allowed to be was the back room. She walked down the hallway, entered an airy bedroom. with a hand-embroidered quilt and a picture frame on the wall, the photo, her and Enrique. From a time when he could barely walk, Zuleide brought her hand to her mouth, sat on the bed, took a deep breath. When I was a girl, she said, looking out the window, I used to sit by the neighbor's fence. He had a jaboticaba tree. I'd just sit there, smelling the fruit. I never had the courage to ask. Enrique smiled. Well, now you have your own, and you can eat them before they're ripe, if you want. They went out the back door. The jaboticaba tree stood there, young but alive. And Enrique said, this tree will grow with you, and one day, children will sit beneath it to hear stories die your stories. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I thought I would die forgotten, but today, I think life still has a beautiful chapter left for me. Enrique hugged her tight. Yes, it does, and now. You live where you'll never have to knock to enter again. Zuleide closed her eyes and whispered, this isn't just a house, it's a home. And in that moment, with no ribbon cutting, no formal ceremony, no fancy speech, a new story was planted right there. The story of someone who spent a lifetime opening doors for others and finally found one open just for her. Asterisk, while the world outside celebrated Enrique's courage, and Zuleide's story is a symbol of long overdue justice, the old Montero clan sank into a dense, uncomfortable, and revealing silence. Those formal Sunday gatherings, silent. Those pompous dinners with rehearsed laughs and toasts at the end, canceled. The Montero family, once synonymous with power and prestige, was now a wall cracked from within. Because truth has this flaw. It leaks through the cracks even when everyone pretends everything's fine. Mariana, the matriarch, withdrew to the isolated wing of the mansion, locked doors, avoided phone calls, stopped going out, even stopped wearing makeup. Some said it was fear of scandal. Others said it was wounded pride. But Enrique knew the truth. It was guilt. Old guilt, disguised as fresh anger. That's when he decided to do what needed to be done. He climbed the mansion staircase on a cloudy afternoon, as if the weather outside mirrored the storm inside the house. He knocked. Silence. Knocked. Again. Her voice, hoarse and muffled, came through the door. I have nothing to say to you. But I have something to say, Enrique replied. She opened the door slowly, sunken eyes, trembling hands, the old lioness, now just an echo of her former arrogance. Enrique, you dragged our name through the mud. I scrubbed clean what you tried to perfume with lies. Grandma, some dirt not even Chanel no. 5 can hide. She looked down, but didn't yield. One day you'll understand that keeping order is more important than pleasing servants. Enrique stepped closer, his voice steady, yet calm, and Zuleide wasn't a servant. She was my family, and you erased her from the records, forged documents, silenced my mother. All for what? To keep up an image, to preserve the last name? Mariana slowly sat in her armchair, staring into nothingness. You don't know the burden of carrying an empire, but I know the burden of growing up without a hug. Grandma, Enrique took a deep breath. Look at me. You still have time to do the right thing. She responded coldly. Truth only destroys when it's out of control. Truth only destroys what was built on lies. Silence. Enrique stood, walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned and said, I'm going to give our story back what you tried to bury. And if that means you'll disown me, then disown me proudly. But don't expect me to inherit your cowardice. And he left, without looking back. Hours later, Mariana packed a suitcase, quietly, without drama. She left the country and never returned. Some said it was to avoid scandal, others that she went in search of peace. But Enrique knew the peace she sought was the one she had never known how to offer, and that day, he learned something he would never forget. Some families fall apart when truth arrives, but others only begin to exist once it's spoken. Weeks passed since the explosion of that video, and what was once just an act of reparation became a movement. Zuleide's name, once whispered with disdain in elite hallways, was now on newspaper covers, in tributes, even painted on public school murals. But Enrique wasn't after fame. He wanted truth. So he made a decision. Let's throw a party, but this time, not to celebrate golden rings, but pure hearts, and he organized everything with his own hands. The party took place in the dirt yard of the newly opened Zuleide Nascimento Institute. There were no marble floors or crystal chandeliers, but there was the sound of children's laughter, the smell of popcorn in the air, and wooden tables where poor and rich, black and white, orphans and elders sat side by side. Zuleide arrived holding hands with 2 children, wearing a floral dress, low shoes, and that smile of someone who had already understood that the world may beat you down, but it can't dim your light. Enrique welcomed her at the door with a microphone in hand. Today isn't an event. It's a restoration. Today, the whole country will rise in applause for the woman who taught me what it means to love, without expecting anything in return. And he pulled her to the center. The crowd applauded. People cried. Children surrounded her as if she were their own grandmother. Zuleide tried to speak. Her voice cracked. She took a deep breath and said, "I'm nobody. Never was. Just a woman who carried boys on her lap, warmed bottles, and washed sheets in the middle of the night. But today I realized that love doesn't go to waste. Love is like a seed. Even if the owner forgets to water it, one day it grows, even if it's in the heart of a boy who becomes a man." Enrique crouched, scooped a handful of red earth from the ground and said, "This is the soil where dreams will grow, because it's the same ground you walked on, and everything you touched bloomed." The crowd rose in applause, and there, in that simple courtyard, they celebrated the most beautiful union of all, the marriage between gratitude and justice. Asterisk before, Enrique was known as Dr. Enrique Montero, the magnate, the heir, the promising investor, the one in tailored suits, rehearsed smiles, and a packed agenda. But after that day, something changed. People started calling him other names. Enrique from the Institute, Enrique from Aunt Zuleide, Enrique of the children. And he smiled like he never had before. He stepped down as CEO, handed over the presidency of the company to a mixed board with social representatives, educators, and grassroots professionals, and he devoted himself to walking. Yes, walking, feet on the ground, eyes looking into other eyes. He visited shelters, schools, and communities. He brought bread, he brought books, but above all, he brought presents. One day, during a TV interview, a host asked, "Enrique, you lost status, fortune, influence. Do you regret it?" He smiled. "I lost what was never truly mine. I gained what I always lacked." And what was that? Peace. The kind that only comes when you look in the mirror and like what you see, even without a suit. That same week, an 8-year-old boy sent a letter to the Institute. "Uncle Enrique, I want to be like you when I grow up, but I don't want to be rich. I want to be fair." Enrique read the letter in silence, and in that moment, he knew he wasn't a doctor anymore. He had become an example. And that title, no elite will ever be able to buy. Time went on. And with it came life's natural cycle. Zuleide, now older, slowed her steps, but she never dimmed her light. Even with fragile health, she insisted on visiting the Institute, sitting with the little ones, telling stories about when she was invisible, and the children would ask, "But how could no one see you, Aunt Zuleide?" She'd smile. "Sometimes we shine so brightly on the inside that other people's eyes can't handle it." But on a gray autumn morning, Zuleide didn't wake up. She passed gently in her sleep, her hand intertwined with Enrique's, as if resting after a long journey. The wake was simple, just as she had asked. In the main hall of the Institute, with wildflowers, wooden benches, and a chorus of children softly singing a lullaby she had once taught them. Enrique stood on a stool, holding her portrait, with a shaky voice. He said, "Aunt Zuleide didn't die. She just moved to where she always belonged, heaven. But she left behind an inheritance no one can steal, love, courage, dignity." He paused, looked around, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "Some people are born invisible, but they weren't born to live erased." And in that moment, there was no silence. There was reverence. A light breeze swept through the trees, and a child, not fully understanding, looked up to the sky and said, "She became a star, right?" Enrique smiled and answered, "She always was. We were just too busy to look up." And that's how this story ends, of a simple woman, but a giant soul, of a rich man who only discovered his true wealth when he found the hug that raised him, and of a world that only changes when someone dares to say, "Enough." So, what did you think of the ending, huh? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button to support the channel, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this. See you next time. From your Grandpa Rico.